A paint drip splatters and runs, revealing a series of images. A woman playing violin, then in a bright pink costume, then in a blind skier pinning atop a mountain. The drip finally lands, revealing text in print and braille. Unsightly Opinions.
Hi, welcome to Unsightly Opinions. My name's Tamara. Today, I'm going to be updating you on my human rights complaint. For those of you who want to watch the original video, I'm going to link it in a card above and in the description down below. But very briefly, what happened was last December, I traveled to the East Coast to visit with a poorly family member. While there, as a group, our family decided to visit a Nordic spa to try and decompress. What ended up transpiring was a gross human rights violation. I deal with discrimination on a daily basis. About every third trip in an Uber is a battle. I'm often asked to leave public spaces with my service dog, and people generally not understanding what life is like with a disability and treating you like a second-class citizen. But this particular incident was one of the worst. Robbie's sister booked the appointment for the entire family, and while booking, she notified them that I would be attending with my guide dog. At that point, they said they didn't know what to do with a guide dog, and she advised them that they needed to connect with me. I called them, but because of the time difference between the West and East Coast, I got their after-hours manager and was advised that I would have to call back the next week on Tuesday, 2 days prior to our appointment, because the administrative staff had gone home for the day. On Tuesday, when I was on the East Coast, I called the spa and left a message, which was not returned. I called the spa again and left another message, which wasn't returned. Thursday at 11 a.m., we arrived at the spa with my guide dog and with my wheelchair. In the previous video, I didn't mention that I was with my wheelchair because I wasn't ready to talk about my need for that device at that point. However, when we arrived, Robbie and I went into the spa with my wheelchair and patients, and when we got to the front desk, after we had filled in a number of things, we were told the dog was not allowed on the premises. Their building was not wheelchair accessible. It was not hygienic. It was not safe. What would the other guests think? It was an allergy risk. They made every excuse humanly possible to disallow me entrance. I explained to them just how illegal that was, and as a guide dog user that I had rights to enter any public space, which includes businesses. They said that I was wrong and I had to leave. I explained to them again that this was not what they wanted to do, that I really didn't want to be a burden. I showed them the Blind Persons Rights Act. When they doubled down, that not only could my dog not attend, but I could not attend because I was a wheelchair user, that the chair would have to stay in the car, I went to the parking lot because I didn't want to start a fight. It was humiliating, it was dehumanizing, and it was incredibly frustrating because on the one day that we were trying to relax on an otherwise very hectic trip, my presence had interrupted and disrupted my entire family's plans. When I went out to the car, I did what I normally do, which is phone the non-emergency police line and ask for assistance. I asked for a police officer to attend and explain to them the laws. They said they didn't know what the laws were and I should contact the CNIB. I told them I don't think that that's what I should be doing because that's not what I've done in the past. Could you please have an officer attend? And they told me to contact the CNIB. CNIB was very helpful and they put me in touch with the blind person's rights advocate for the East Coast. In speaking with her, she said to wait in the parking lot. She would call them, send them some information, explain to them what rights were allotted to a disabled person and why they were wrong, and I would be allowed to go in. So I waited. I got a call back from her shortly after. She said she spoke to them, she spoke to the manager, and they are doubling down. They are not going to allow me entry. They say they're a private business, it's a health hazard. They were yet again making every excuse in the book to disallow my guide dog. And she urged me to call back the non-emergency police line and get an officer to attend. I called the non-emergency police line again and insisted that I speak to a supervisor or the constable in charge, and eventually I was put through to a member of the RCMP. He said he didn't know what the laws were regarding guide dogs. He was not going to attend because this was a human rights issue, but agreed to speak to the lady at CNIB and get a better understanding of what the laws were. After they had conferred, he called the spa to explain to them what the laws were, and yet again, they doubled down and said I was not allowed entry. At this point, I was also speaking to the head of CNIB guide dog training, who also got in contact with the spa and was quite disgruntled as a blind person herself. She was met with the same vitriol I had been hearing for most of the morning. At this point, both members from CNIB who were involved in this situation told me I needed to file a human rights complaint because this was blatant discrimination and it was not okay. On our way to our next appointment, we got a call from the spa saying that we were now welcome to come back, that my guide dog could come, but my wheelchair would have to stay in the car. I think it incredibly frustrating that as an ambulatory wheelchair user, somebody's telling me that I can't use one or both of my mobility aids. It's clear that even after they'd had a stern talking to, they just didn't get it. You do not have the right to tell a wheelchair user where they can bring their wheelchair. A wheelchair is an extension of a human when they are in it. And if they decide that they need to be carried down the stairs in their chair by other members in their group, or that they need to keep their chair with them for safety reasons, whether your space is accessible or not, it is not your decision to tell that person that they have to leave their mobility devices behind. I have shown in previous videos what happens when I take my dog to pools, to spas. I find a space where she is out of the way, I lay her down, I make sure she's comfortable and within eye shot of a member of my group so they can keep an eye on her at all times. She's on tie down so she can't move anywhere, usually lying on a towel so that she doesn't leave any fur behind. There are far too many times in my life when I haven't had the energy to fight the fight. I haven't been able to put the time investment in to make sure that justice is served. But this time I felt was really worth some education because I was never going to attend this spa again, but I did not want this to happen to any other disabled person that attended their space. So I filed a human rights complaint. I had to document everything that had happened, indicate why I was being discriminated against, and after I spent many hours filling out applications and forms and sending it in, I heard nothing for 2 months. Then I got an email back that I was on the caseload for one of the arbitrators for the Human Rights Commission. She asked if we could have a phone call, and I agreed. At which point I relayed all of the information to her again, and she said it was one of the most cut and dry discrimination she has seen in many years. Oftentimes, the complaints she's getting now are for people with invisible disabilities. She doesn't get many complaints anymore for discrimination against guide dogs or discrimination against people in wheelchairs. She said she had to remain impartial, but she explained the process to me. I had 2 options. Now that the complaint was active, I could 1, go to arbitration where we agree to settle the dispute, or 2, take it before the committee, the tribunal, and have it heard in open court. She told me if I wanted to go with route number 2, it would likely be 2 years before they even got an investigator on the case. I told her I was fine with arbitration and I wanted to try that first to see if we could come to some form of understanding. When I got the response back from my initial claim, the spa still denied that they had done any wrongdoing, that they were more than welcoming of anyone with a disability, and that if I had only called ahead, this whole awful situation would have never happened, which essentially stated that it was my fault for not being allowed entry into their premises. So, in responding to that letter, I submitted witness statements from all 9 members that were there, including the police officer, audio recordings of some of the phone call. I live in a one-party consent state, phone records showing that I had called, and I submitted yet more evidence and 2 statements from the people I was dealing with at CNIB as to what happened from their perspective. My sister was kind enough to narrate both of those statements, so I am going to include them here. Some personal information has been redacted to protect privacy and personal identification.
Friday, April 1, 2022. To whom it may concern. At about 11:15 a.m. on December 2nd, I received a call from CNIB Ring Central Switchboard. They were transferring me a call that they received on the 1-800-CNIB phone line. I accepted the call. It was from Tamara. She introduced herself as someone who is from Redacted and traveling here on vacation. She had an appointment for herself and her group at the Redacted Spa in Redacted. She was refused services because of her guide dog. She told me she had contacted the non-emergency police station as they told her to call CNIB. She gave me her phone number and I offered to help her out any way I could. I told her I would contact the Redacted people if she wanted. After I got off the phone with Tamara, I called redacted. She is an orientation and mobility specialist who works for vision loss rehabilitation. She works with guide dog users across the province. Redacted also suggested I call the spa directly and thought that it was probably a misunderstanding. I called the spa and told them that a person recently went into the spa and wasn't allowed to keep their appointment. I wondered if there was some confusion or mix-up about the guide dog. I gently reminded her that a person with a guide dog is permitted to bring their dog into a public space. She disagreed. She said their facility wasn't accessible for people with disabilities or people with guide dogs. It was a private facility. She said that dogs were unsanitary. There was a cleanliness and hygiene issue. She said that there was no space for the dog. She said that there was no space around the outdoor heated relaxation pool for a dog to wait. Later, she said there was one small spot where the dog could go. She said the change room was very small, and there would not be space for the dog. She also said that some of the other customers come to relax and that having a dog there could be too upsetting to people who go there to relax. She also said that the dog wouldn't be able to go into the dry or hot sauna, and that there was no place for the dog to wait. However, I did ask Tamara about that, and Tamara told me that she did not intend to go into the sauna and told the person at the desk that she would not be going into the sauna. I told her that it was 100% against the law for access to a place to be denied to someone because they have a guide dog, that if she refused entry, she could be at risk for having a human rights complaint being made against her. She said that if I was so knowledgeable about this subject, that I should email her some information about human rights laws regarding this. She gave me her email address, and I sent her the following information as quickly as I could. Email attached. Sent December 2nd, 2021, 11:51 a.m. Subject, as per your request. I hope that we can resolve this issue. No one would want to involve the media in a human rights complaint. Guide dog legislation. Human rights legislation prohibits discrimination against a person with a disability who is working with a service animal. Discrimination includes denial of access to any premises where the public would normally have access. This includes the rights of tenants. Penalties under human rights legislation range across the country from $100 to $10,000. The following lists legislation pertaining to guide dogs in all of Canada's 13 jurisdictions. A short summary of the sections that deal with service animals are provided. To access the full document, click on the name of the legislation. 1. Human Rights Act. Link. The definition of physical disability includes reliance on a guide dog or any other remedial device. No one may deny accommodation, services, or facilities that are available to the public or discriminate against anyone with respect to accommodation, services, or facilities based on physical disability. Redacted Foundation. Pronouns she, her. Program lead. Redacted. CNIB. CNIB letterhead, dated Thursday, March 31st, 2022, to whom it may concern. On December 2nd, 2021, I received a call from Redacted, advocacy lead for Redacted, explaining that one of our clients, Tamara, had been denied access because of her guide dog. I called Tamara, who was very upset, and she told me that the staff had told her they could not allow her dog because it was unhygienic. She told me that they later changed their reasoning to a concern about other customers' allergies. She told me that they had called the police, but that they told her there was nothing they could do. I also called the RCMP because although I knew they could not do anything as far as investigating, they could at least inform the spa management that they were violating the Human Rights Code. I spoke with an officer and they assured me that they were already speaking with Tamara. I then spoke with Redacted, the owner of the spa. In my role as Redacted for CNIB guide dogs, I work with government agencies and businesses to help them understand and comply with legislation around the rights of guide dog handlers. In all the interactions I have had nationwide, I have never heard of such a patronizing and uneducated view of people living with disabilities as Redacted. In my conversation with her, spa manager, Redacted, was resolved to exhaust every potential barrier that could exclude Tamara from the spa. Spa owner, Redacted, explained to me that she needed to understand the situation more fully before she could determine if their spa was accessible for Tamara. Other customers are not screened to determine if they are able to access services. I explained that going forward, best practice would be to ask the customer how you can assist them. I told her that, with all due respect, it is not her job to determine what a customer is able to do. Spa owner, Redacted, then had a series of questions for me about how a person who is blind could do things like navigate the environment, use stairs, find the door to the sauna, etc. She was concerned about Tamara burning her hand in the sauna or not being able to find things if she had her guide dog lying down. She was also concerned that that Tamara's dog would bother other guests. For a business owner to have these archaic ideas about customers with disabilities is deeply disturbing. If you would like to discuss this matter further, please contact me by phone or email as listed below. Sincerely, redacted. Project Lead, CNIB.
Not only were they non-compliant with allowing the entry, they were non-compliant with even the most basic disability rights. They didn't have a disability parking space in a parking lot for 20 vehicles. So, once again, I submitted all of my documentation, and every member that was there was saying the same thing. I wanted the arbitrator to see that this was not an exaggeration. I'm not kicking up a fuss because I think it's fun, that this was a serious issue, and the fact that they were doubling down over and over and over again, and even when people in a position to tell them what the right answer was were telling them, they still didn't get it. So, once that was submitted, I also submitted a list of my demands. First was a donation in the amount of $500, the amount we would have spent at that spa on the day, to a blind or disability rights organization in Canada in my name. The second was a written letter of apology, which I could make public one time. The third was education for all of their staff in human rights issues, which I was willing to provide for them because that is a service I provide to my clients, or through the Human Rights Commission. 4, that they make a plan to improve their accessibility so situations like this never happen again. That's it. All I was asking for was for them to understand their mistake, for them to own up to their mistake, and for them to learn from their mistake and make their space better for those like myself. We went back and forth for months. They would agree to do a donation, but it would be in their name on my behalf. They couldn't do one in my name. Fine, I was fine with that. They had a plan. They were going to improve their accessibility, and when I asked for said plan, they tried to hold it over my head as leverage to conclude arbitration. They said they wouldn't show me the plan unless I agreed to settle. I said, well then, I don't believe a plan exists, so my terms have not been met. They would not agree to a public letter of apology, which I could publish, and they would agree to give education to their staff members. My reply to that one is it needed to be all members of staff, including management, because it was not the general staff members that were the problem, it was management who were discriminatory. We went back and forth dozens of times and they wouldn't budge. They wouldn't tell me what their plans were for improving accessibility. They waffled back and forth and insisted that I was going to hold this over their head forever, that I could make a huge problem for them, that they were going to lose business. They didn't want to deal with the consequences, and I said, not good enough. We can deal with this now, or we can deal with this the long way, because I'm invested now. I have all of my evidence. I have all of the documentation from everyone involved. It's up to you. Let me say what I need to say. Let me be open about what happened, learn from the experience and move on. Or we can take the 2-year approach, and it is going to cost you a whole lot more money because you're going to need to get lawyers involved. They insisted that they were not budging, so as of a few weeks ago, we reached an impasse in negotiations. Since they would not give me any concrete assurances of what their plans would be for improving accessibility, I didn't feel that it was appropriate to let them off the hook. I dropped just about every other term down to I wanted to publish the letter that they sent me, and I wanted a concrete list. They said no to both of those things. So here we are. I am now in a holding pattern. I can't let this go. I can't move on. And it's really unfortunate because every time I have to bring it up again, every time I have to go through my notes, every time I'm spending hours writing response emails, trying to get evidence, trying to make sure everything is exactly the way it needs to be, it's physically and emotionally exhausting. It's been almost a year and nothing has happened. Except they have now painted a disability placard in their parking lot. It's disappointing. It's frustrating that they don't believe that as an individual who uses mobility aids, that I have the same autonomy and rights as every other human being. I am still upset, and for those of you who gave me flack in the comments last time because I did not name the spa, I will. As soon as this case is finished, as soon as I am able to speak freely, as soon as I'm legally given the privilege and the right to speak about what this is in concrete details, you better believe I'm going to be making an update video. Because I believe this spa should be held accountable. I believe that spaces should be accessible. Not because I think I have more rights than anyone else, but because I think everyone, no matter their ability or disability, should have equal access and equal opportunities. I believe in equity, not special treatment, equity. If their architects had taken some time to consider accessibility in 2017 when this building was built, we wouldn't be having this problem today. So, for their sakes, I hope their accessibility improves. I hope that by the time the trial comes around, that absolutely every inch of that space is accessible. That's all I want. I don't want financial gain from this. I don't want anything except an acknowledgement that they did wrong and a promise that they're going to do better. And I really don't think that's too much to ask. I don't always have the energy to fight every fight. It's overwhelming and it's exhausting. Being reminded repeatedly, you are less than. You don't belong. If you have the energy, if you have the time to put in, if you're able to navigate the bureaucratic nonsense, please fight the fight, because I'm not doing this for me. I'm doing this for the people that come after me. And for those of you who are presently able-bodied, know that you could join the disability community at any point in your life, through illness, injury, or age. And all I ask of you at this point is please treat people with disabilities like human beings. Know that we have independent thoughts, independent emotions, independent aspirations, independent lives, and tomorrow it might be you. So your actions today matter. Words can hurt. For now, I'm going to leave with a wish for the world to become a more inclusive place, no matter your ability, ethnicity, disability, or background. And it's going to be a hard-fought battle, and it's going to take a long time, but it's going to be worth it. I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.